What's going on, collective listeners? How are you today? Got an awesome episode. We interviewed John Patrick today. He's a strength and conditioning coach and a department chair for physical education and human performance at George Walton Academy down in Monroe, Georgia. And the thing I'm excited about with John, he really has a long, extensive experience in the field. Definitely a ton of wisdom provided, a ton of experience, a ton of knowledge. This episode is awesome because he's obviously in the process right now at George Walton, which is a private school, sort of prep school situation where he's really building things from the ground up. So he's going to give us a little bit of insight on how things have changed and how, kind of the insight on the pulse of the strength and conditioning field has changed since he started to where it's at now. And then how he's going about, building things out from a structural perspective at his current location. So let's get into it. We got an awesome episode today. And as always, appreciate you guys listening. What's going on, collective listeners? Welcome back to another episode of the Samson Strength Coach Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Grasso. Today, we are joined by John Patrick, who has joined us on very short notice. I'm very appreciative of that. He is the strength coach and department chair for physical education and human performance at George Walton Academy down in Monroe, Georgia. I'm sure it's pretty hot down there right now, given what I'm experiencing up here in Connecticut. So a little background on John. He's got his bachelor's in exercise science from University of Mount Union and a master's degree in kinesiology from Georgia Southern University. Some of the places that he's been, obviously George Walton, as I mentioned before, UNC Charlotte, Providence School of Jacksonville, Kennesaw State, Youngstown State, and Jacksonville University. And he's going to tell us his story in a little bit, so I'll toss it to him. But, just to kind of go through his certifications, there was an extensive list, so we were kind of deciding which ones were worth mentioning and which ones weren't. But we got a master strength and conditioning coach, obviously a CSCS, and he's a registered strength and conditioning coach with distinction, as well as a tactical strength and conditioning facilitator, amongst many more. And I told him if he felt like he wanted to mention them, he could. He said they're not that important. If you guys are really interested, go look it up on LinkedIn. There's a nice little list there. But anyway, John, welcome. Thank you so much for hopping on here. Why don't you feel a need if you feel the need to kind of fill the slots and anything I missed as far as your introduction, go ahead. But yeah, why don't you tell us your story, man?
For sure. I appreciate it. I appreciate reaching out and being on the podcast. I think most people's stories pretty much happen the same, right? Everybody's pretty much in athletics or watches athletics and pretty much falls in love with training. And then from there, their education system pretty much takes them that direction. That's the same exact thing happened to me, in high school, fell in love with training, had really good high school coaches that, really knew what they were doing as far as training wise and was really personable and educated us on how to train properly. And then we kind of just, fell in love with being strong and it grew from there. Right. So, I got to work with Dick Hartzell, who is the inventor of the big jump stretch bands, the big rubber bands. So I worked with him for 2 years, and that was right in the late 90s, right when they're getting introduced to West Side Barbell, but also, Donnie Thompson was really big into doing some of those things too, as far as tractional stuff. So I got to work with the man himself and go around and kind of sell bands at different shows and clinics and stuff. And plus he had a gym in Youngstown, Ohio that I worked at and ran sessions and classes. So it's really, it was really good to grow under that mentor and get that kind of experience, because it was back then, like, those methods were kind of non-existent. Nobody really used those kind of training methods. Then all of a sudden, that kind of got me into minor league baseball. Particularly with the Detroit Tigers first and then Cleveland Indians, just for the fact that they started using the bands to stretch with and wanted somebody that knew, how to properly and educate the players. So that actually propelled me into minor league baseball, specifically just working with him. And then, minor league baseball kind of flowed into collegiate athletics. And then, collegiate athletics or, high school or tactical has been the process ever since. Right. So, it's been a process and it's been exciting. And obviously all the different institutions I've been at, there's been different experiences, right, that you kind of take home and take those experiences and move on to the next one. But it's been, coaching's been fantastic to me. I've been, been blessed to be with, to train some great athletes, but also work with some great coaches and some great administrators. And it's pretty much led me to this point right now at George Walton, kind of working with, developing a department from the ground up. I just got put into the department chair head just recently. So just trying to work with the administrative staff and the academic staff to get things vertically aligned, I guess, as far as curriculum goes. But then also working with the staff we have as far as strength coaches go. and seeing, trying to get that on track, because it's something they've never had before. And, I've started programs at the collegiate level, but, high school is a little bit, I mean, it's similar, but there's also a little bit different too, just to work with a little bit different individual. But for the most part, it's been exciting so far. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great story. And so what years were you in Ohio, kind of moving through that change?
I was born in Ohio. So I lived through Ohio. I primarily left in 2001 for my first GA. I was actually my first GA position was at University of Texas, El Paso. Really, it was the first time I was really away from home, besides, only being in like minor league baseball for a short period of time. It was rough. I ended up going back home, intern at Youngstown State, and then I got my second GA position. And I got my second GA position at Georgia Southern in 2003. And then from there, I was at Jacksonville until 2008. And then I was at Youngstown State, went back to Ohio from 2008 to 2012. So about a 4-year stint. So I was, originally being from Ohio, when I went back to Youngstown State, I thought that was like the mecca of jobs for me, right? Like going back, I had an opportunity to either, go to Mount Union College, or I was going to walk on and I played football at Mount Union or played football at Youngstown State. Both were dominant, teams in the 90s. I chose to go to Mount Union just because athletically at that time I wasn't very talented to play at Youngstown State. So I got a better opportunity at Mount Union College. So, but when I went back to Youngstown, I thought that was, I was going to be there forever, just because I had family living there. My sister was living there and stuff. And then eventually, that didn't work out. And my family eventually moved also, so it kind of worked out for the benefit. But yeah, I mean, Youngstown's a special place. I don't know if you've ever been there, but most people that travel to Youngstown, Ohio, it takes a special type of person to live there. But it's a good place for sure. So.
Yeah, I've heard. The only experience I have, I interviewed for a GA spot there a while back,
right?
And I went like through the whole process, and I forget who I was dealing with during that time. Ended up, I'm similar to you. Like, I'm from Connecticut and wanted to stay in Connecticut, so any chance I got to stay here, even when it seemed like those opportunities may be coming to an end, and you're kind of interviewing at like any other opportunity available. It's like as soon as somebody from Connecticut comes in and offers like a counter, be like, I got to take that. So yeah, that was my. But I did kind of looking. I'm like, man, that Youngstown spot, like that looked pretty good. And I was really starting to consider it. And then obviously I've seen, I think what was it called? The Youngstown Boys, I think was the 30 for 30 they did on them. So yeah. What's your take on that? Was that, because I think Tressel's still there at Youngstown State.
Well, yeah, he's the president of YC now. So I actually, when I was working at Jump Stretch with Dick Hartzell, I actually worked at Austintown Fitch High School too. And that was Maurice Claret's, the old running back from Ohio State. That was his freshman year at Austintown Fitch. And I had him as a freshman, and he was a monster then. I actually thought he was an assistant coach at a freshman in high school. So I was like, it was like the first day I'm recording, some measurables or whatnot. We did like vertical jumps and some stuff. And I'm like, hey, coach, can you write this down? He's like, I'm not a coach, I'm like, all right, sorry, dude, But he ended up leaving Austintown, and he went to another public school locally and had a really good, successful career. But I worked for a predecessor for Jim Tressel, because Jim Tressel left in 2000. To go Ohio State. So I actually worked for his old defensive coordinator, John Haycock, who's now the DC at Iowa State. Was really successful there with the defense they run. So I worked under him for 3 years, and then there was a coaching change, and I worked for the new coach for 1 year. But I had a great time. I met Tressel when he would visit town and stuff like that. So I understand, when my time at Youngstown State under the old regime is, it was very traditional base. We had the same pregame meal for 26 years, and it wasn't like now where you go, there's buffet or whatnot where players you got the plate came out to you. You got a baked potato, you got a half-pound hamburger patty, you got a slice of apple pie, and I believe you got like a salad, and that was your meal. And if some guys ate it, some guys didn't eat it. That was it, right? So very traditional based, and that's what it was. But they won games during the 90s. And, continued into 2000s, had some success in 2006, making the semis. And then obviously, I think just recently they made it to the semis again. And when Bo Pelini was there as a coach.
Right,
so,
yeah.
There's a lot, there's a lot of tradition there. And it's a special place to me just because football is king there. But yeah, Tressel's still the president there. I think this is his last year. He said that he's going to retire after this year. Spend time with his family, but yeah, he's pretty much God there. So when he walks down the streets, they turn gold. So he's everybody loves him. So
yeah, that's awesome. And so you said, do you still have any family out there? Or do you say they all moved?
I have some cousins. I think last time I visited there was last summer. Just had something going up in the area, in the Cleveland area. So I visited some friends. I still have some immediate family up that way, but most of my family transplanted down to Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. So now I'm I travel mostly in the Southeast now, which is very nice. I don't have to worry about winters. I can go to the beach when I want to go to the beach if I decide to. So I always have a place to stay. So it's nice. And my sister and my family members, live really, really close to one another. So it's just a one-stop shop. I can see everybody without any issues. So it makes it pretty nice. So
yeah, I was gonna say. So how far is Monroe, Georgia from Jacksonville?
It's about 5 hours.
5 hours.
It's
okay.
Not too bad. Yeah, it's a nice morning drive, and then it's all interstate. And then once you get there, then you could just sit back and relax. So
yeah, okay. Well, kind of getting into it now. So like obviously, you're at George Walton, you're in Monroe. It's like you're kind of trying to build something from scratch, right? And that's kind of what I'm hearing when you kind of describe like how this goes. And like I think there's so many different variations of building something from scratch. Like every time someone does this or something, they kind of make their own. There's different ways of doing it. And like you said, you already alluded to, like it's different at different levels. So like I guess my question would be like, all right, so like what's motivating you now in your career versus what was previously motivating you, right? Because like obviously like you've got you got to be motivated to like build the stat, like you're trying to build something out there, and we can kind of get into that in a second, like what that looks like, but just solely based on the fact of like how has like motivation and like your discipline towards the craft changed from early 2000s.
No, 100%. I've always wanted to help people. I think it doesn't matter if it's collegiate athlete, professional, high school, you're always there to mentor individuals and try to provide the best product for those individuals, right? Lead them down the right path. I think the biggest thing now is being so far in my career, I still like being challenged, but it's really trying to still educate individuals what a strength conditioning coach is, right? Like for our profession. So, whether it's, I think everybody has even my parents who are older, they really still understand what I do, right? You're a personal trainer, you hang out in the weight room, like, and I think that's still the stigma in a lot of high schools is, hey, you have your generalized coach, whether it's a football coach or whatnot, who runs the weight room. All the kids are doing, football specific workouts or whatnot. And that even happens in some collegiate level programs. I mean, I think it's becoming more individualized anymore, but my big thing is really, trying to represent and trying to educate individuals on, hey, what is this profession all about? What do we have to offer? It's just not working with student athletes, and making them perform better or whatnot. It's really about educating them on wellness and those wellness perspectives and kind of a fit for life mentality across the board. And that's every aspect that you could possibly do. And I think, working collegiate, love my time there. If another collegiate position opened up, I would definitely be interested in listening to the opportunity, just because I like that demographic, right? It's a very competitive demographic, and you can have some really good relationships. I think the big thing is a lot of these collegiate programs kind of use the eligibility of individuals and then just send them on their way. And then when they're done playing, those individuals are lost, right? Like, oh, I don't have the sport anymore. What do I do? How do I train? They don't have that time management skill. They don't know how to cook or fend for themselves. Now, there are some institutions that do a really good job, providing leadership and providing, education after they're done playing. But there are some that don't, right? So that's why some individuals move back to their hometown, or maybe they didn't study a career path that they, or major that they really wanted. They kind of picked one around practice schedule, right? Like that happens all the time. So now instead of completing a degree in 4 years, they're for 6 years, right? So, and then when they come out, they're like, I still don't even want to do this, right? So that's something that at the high school level, I think, I'm trying to push as much as possible as, hey, we're just not, the weight room honors. We're not coaches that run the weight room specifically. We're here to pretty much, invest the time to really, improve physical activity, but then also that fit for life mentality as far as a wellness perspective, right? Whether it be, it's kind of cliche, mind, body, soul kind of thing, but really, with mental wellness, COVID, everything coming around, like those things are perspectives that we're really trying to get across. We're in a collegiate aspect. Sometimes you don't really get a a chance to, because you're so worried on athletic performance, right? Or wins and losses. So I think that's something where we have, wins and losses are no stress right now. Like I'm part of academia. It's not an issue where it could have been an issue in the past at other schools. Where now we can kind of focus on those things a little bit more and say, hey, the better quality of life, prepare yourself. So when you do go to college or whatnot, you know how to handle things correctly, and you know how to, if you need to design a workout or if you need something like that, you have the tools to do so. So kind of an educational process as far as those things go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I got to go back to what you mentioned. Your parents how to view you as the personal trainer. I can't even list on the top of my head the amount of like references I've gotten to like the amount of different variations of strength coach that I've gotten called or whatever the case. I'm like, you know what? You're right. Whatever you think I am, I am. Just call. You don't even have to get into it. But I think it is funny, and I think it's weird because we live in a place right now where like I think a lot of people are like, well, and strength coaches specifically, right? Like we get to a point where we're like, okay, we can provide X amount of value in the weight room or whatever the case may be, but we need to start branching out. We need to provide more value in other areas, right? And I think that sounds great, and I think a lot of people want to do that, right? But at the same time, we have sort of a crew of people talking about how, well, the actual craft itself, like the job at the basics, right, isn't enough for you to, get paid X amount of salary. But at the same time, we're all wondering like, well, we want to get paid more. We want to increase the salary. But at the same time, there's a lot of strength coaches being like, well, if you're if you're a guy who's teaching someone how to do an RDL, like you're not, like how much value is there with that, right? And I kind of agree and disagree in different, like it's just, it's kind of depending on the context and the ways in which it's delivered. But I guess, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on that, because obviously you've been in the game for quite some time, right? So like you've seen the transition and the progress and the lack of progress per se of the field, right? So like where are your thoughts on like the type of value we can provide and how we can kind of like accurately be compensated, right? For that value?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely moved in the right direction, right? I mean, just recently, Rob Glass was the first $1 million strength coach, right? He got a big thing, and that was a big situation. But that's for the top 2% of strength coaches, right? Like there's going to be a very rarity that you're ever going to see six figures as a strength coach at the collegiate level. And the only way, it used to be, hey, you have 20 programs, you're one strength coach, you have these programs where now, some coaches go, okay, well, if I just work football or if I just work basketball or whatnot, or if I'm just the head Olympic, that's another direction that I can get to that six figures a little bit quicker or closer to it. You know what I'm saying? The thing is, are we compensated for the work that we do, sufficiently? Probably not, right? For the hours we put in, for the education we have, for the certifications, even though certifications are they don't mean much. I mean, if it was more of a licensure situation, then it would be a little bit different, right? But will our profession ever get to that level? Probably not. I mean, we can't even agree on certain things depending on what it is, right? At the end of the day, coaches administration, especially in the collegiate level, control everything. So I think it's important, if you're a young strength coach and you want to be successful, and you have to intern or something like that, you need to find an institution, but you also need to find a mentor to intern under that is going to be the next big thing, right? Because that's you see it year after year. Hey, this coach has this many individuals that have interned that have gone to this level. This coach has this many, and I think every 2 or 3 years there's another person that pops up that they kind of publicize that, hey, this, if you want to be get real world thing, get a job, hey, get with me and I'll help you out, right? So that's what, first and foremost, the logo's great or whatnot, but I think you really need to get with the coach that's going to be the next step. And that means you have to pay your dues a little bit, right? I think, and everybody says, oh, pay your dues, yeah, you might have to work for 6 months for nothing, or, look very limited, right? But I think it's worth it in the long run, especially, you kind of get a feel for those things. Being a GA is huge. So if you're able to be a graduate assistant and get your school paid for, but also, be at an institution for a period of time, 2 years, you're getting your education and you're learning under someone, and then all of a sudden that loyalty kind of spreads out, and all of a sudden you're part of that connection. I think that's a huge thing. And then from there it kind of grows, and you can see it in the business today. There's schools that only hire or only suggestly hire certain individuals from certain institutions, right? They have a connection. it's kind of like a pathway or a gateway, and it works that way. Should it be that way? Of course not, but it is what it is, right? Most people are going to hire just people that they trust and they know the system, so they don't have to educate others. How do we get to the point where, we're making comparable money to whether it's athletic trainers or whatnot? I mean, it's really going to depend on the administration, how important they really feel, your position is, right? And that's something where you might have to go above and beyond your daily duties to prove yourself, right? So if it's something that, okay, hey, I'm doing my daily duties as a strength coach, but I would like to help out with academia in some aspect as far as helping out, the educational aspect, or I need to do, maybe it's something you help out the ops, doing things with planning or something, like you considerably do a role. If it's something that your summer months are really, really slow, or maybe you have some free time, maybe you go to admin and ask, maybe if you could volunteer some time in administration, right? If that's the direction you want to go. Do a lot of people do that? I don't know. I think a lot of people sometimes get side business, or, hey, I want to sell programs, or I want to do this. But I think that's only going to last for so long, right? There's so many, the thing is a self-worth too. If I'm going to sell a program and I'm going to sell a program for $50, but someone else comes in and sells a program for $10, I mean, some people are going to pay more money for the higher end program, but some people are just going to pay $10 to get the lower end program. I don't really, it is what it is, right? Like, but I think that only goes so far as really trying to show your worth, right? All you're doing is getting extra revenue. You're really not showing your worth as far as a coach or what you are, right? I think really helping out with, being set in stone, or really being part of that institution and proving to administration that, hey, yeah, I want to be here. Do you have a leadership team? Can I be part of it? Do you have a wellness team? Can I be part of it? If you have a student athlete activities committee, is it something that I could be part of that committee? Like, try to ingrain yourself within the population, and really show the students that you're there for the long haul, right? And it's tough because we want to have lives. We want to have, we want to live in nice houses. We don't want to live in dorms or rent apartments, right? So, or sleep on someone's couch. So yeah, we are after the quick fix sometimes, but it's just a matter of paying your, I really hate saying paying your dues, but really trying to, be a genuine individual and just not do it just because you want a title change, or because, but just really do it because you want to be part of something bigger than it is, make something better than when you came in. So I think that's a huge opportunity. Now, other opportunities are going to arise, right? Like, if you're working in, the NEC, and then all of a sudden, another job comes up, in the American League or American Conference or another conference, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I want to make the jump, because sometimes the grass may be greener, it may not. You just have to know the situation and find out what's best, right? So you have to do some research. But yeah, I think it's tough for our profession. It really is. I mean, obviously the time that I've been there in the profession, every position that I've, even though I have a resume and have these certifications, every position I've gotten is because I've known somebody, right? So I've either known somebody on the staff or the hiring committee, or someone put in a really good word. I don't think any job I've ever really applied for that I just gave my resume, someone's like, hey, you have this job. So, right. Which is kind of, disheartening, right? Because you spend all this time on this resume and getting all these certifications. So it's really just word of mouth, and do you do a good job for this coach? The coach recommends you, and the next thing you know, you have the position, right? So, even my most recent collegiate position at UNC Charlotte, like, it just happened that the individual that hired me, knew one of my friends that I worked with, and he worked with him at a former institution. He called him up and said, "Hey, you know anybody that trains this way that would be good for the position?" And the kid's like, "Yeah, this guy right here," gave me my name, and the guy called me up and said, "Hey, like, do you want this job? The position's yours. I got a good recommendation. You just need to drive down here and see me and get approval through the head coach. And if you get that, then everything's good." So like, there was no, hey, what do you do? How do you coach? What's your, 3 strengths and your 3 weaknesses? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, which is a problem sometimes, right? And we talked about licensure a little bit, just hit a little bit on it as far as our certification. Our biggest thing is what is the associations doing for us? You know what I'm saying? Like, they collect our dues, they give us educational resources, but if somebody loses a job due to something, do they have a backup plan so we can pay our mortgage, right? Like, I don't, I know that some associations gather money, like a GoFundMe, if there's like a critical condition to an individual or whatnot, but they really don't have our backs on a lot of situations. So it's something as if, what are these associations? How are, if we want to find credibility, it's not necessarily credibility within ourselves or within the profession. It's with these associations that supposedly we need to have these certifications to put these jobs, right? So, and that's a tough thing. I don't know if that'll ever really happen. You know, it is what it is. And plus, you know, even during COVID, you know, when the institution I was at, we were told not to come to campus, right? But the athletic trainers were told to come to campus just because they were, you know, part of the general wellness, you know, council or whatnot. So now that all of a sudden puts athletic trainers ahead of us as far as wellness professionals, but you know, it's something that we should be pretty much a mutual bond, right? Like we should be working coincide with the sports medicine staff, or even be part of the sports medicine staff, which may help, you know, pretty much secure some stability. But that's what these people are fighting for. You know, Scott Bennett has done a really good job, you know, when he was with the NSCA and now he's with the CSCCA, he's done a really good job, you know, trying to work with the NSCA as far as the committee goes, but also the NCAA as far as trying to be on the committee board. So he's brought up some really good situations, but it's just a battle that I just don't think sometimes people have the not necessarily just the time or the effort they really want to keep on putting into it without any result, right? Like somebody at the end of the day wants to be like, finally we broke through and got it done, but this has been going on for, you know, 20 years, you know what I'm saying? So no, I think it's positive. I think everything's moving in the right direction, but it's really the importance of the coaching staffs that you work with, and if they find you deemable, like if they can't replace you for less money, because that's what happens once you get older. Sometimes, you know, they might find a younger strength coach that they can pay less, that they may think may make more of an impact, right? So it happens often. So it's really a waiting game sometimes as far as, you know, being the profession. There's not a lot of, you know, late 40, 50, 60-year-old strength coaches still in the business. And if they are, you know, they're either at institutions that they're running the whole show and they can, you know, are delegating powers to the interns, or maybe they're selling equipment or something like that, right? Or they got their doctorate degree and they're more of a leadership perspective or academia perspective. So it's really dependent on, you know, where you want to go, where you see yourself in the future as far as the profession goes. Some people will stay, you know, tacticals open up is a big profession a lot of people have been getting into. High school has opened up a lot of jobs. So, you know, jobs are opening up. It's just a matter of where you want to be and where you're going to be happy at, right? Like if you get a tactical job, like if you like working with, you know, if you like high stress situations and you like, you know, wins and losses dictating your job, then you might want to go back to college. You know, who knows? It's, you know, people like punishment sometimes. So it's really up to your choice of what you want to do. But I think the situations are getting better. It's just the thing is a lot of people don't hear about it because our field is so saturated. And for every individual that's making six figures or making a affordable, you know, living off this profession, there's 5 or 6 more that are working for nothing, or, you know, making, you know, $1,000 a month, right? So it's just few and far between. So
yeah, for sure. Well, the one question I do have is, and that's great insight. I appreciate you kind of, because that is a great, you know, sort of recap or, you know, sort of like pulse of the people, if you will, of like where the pulse of strength and conditioning is at right now. And obviously the way the, you know, the field is set up. But when someone reached out to, you know, your current employer or a coach who was looking to hire you, and they said, we're looking for somebody who trains people this way, what was that way, right? Like what were some of, I would love to hear.
It was more of methodology than anything else.
Yeah.
So, you know, some people are Olympic based, some people are conjugate, some people are high intensity. You know, some people are, you know, rah cheerleader, you know. It was just you know, not to throw anybody under the bus or tell anybody, you know, what I do training philosophy wise, but it was pretty much from that perspective. It's just a philosophy basis, right? And that's the thing is, you know, I put myself in situations that, you know, I think every coach should put themselves in situations, not be stuck to one philosophy, right? Like I used to be a really big Olympic lift you know, I first off, you know, I worked with, you know, rubber bands and the jump stretch bands with Dick Hartzell. And then I moved into, you know, more Olympic base. That's what I was educated with. And then when I helped intern with the Jacksonville Jaguars at the time, strength coach there, his name was Mark Hasanovich, huge high intensity individual, just, you know, a lot of machine based, some free weight, but a lot of tempo work and, you know, one set to failure, you know, typical Arthur Jones, you know, novice equipment stuff. And he, you know, he allowed me to come in and intern 2 totally different philosophies, but, you know, he educated me on, you know, hey, this is what we do and this is why we do this. And just from a safety perspective, hypertrophy perspective and stuff. And he understood what I did with my teams, but he never really didn't agree with, some of the Olympic lift terminology, but never tried to sway my judgment that, hey, Olympic lifts are bad, you shouldn't do them with your kids, right? Because I had, my facility was, 3,000 square feet with 8 Olympic platforms and 8 racks, and that's all we had. So it's not like, and I was at I don't want to say a lower end Division I school, but it was like, I'm not going to come in and say, hey, I'm Olympic philosophy and you just have machines. We need to clean all this stuff out and get Olympic platforms, right? And vice versa. He could probably do whatever he wants at that level, but there's going to be different buy-in from his athletes just because they're coming from different philosophies collegiately, right?
Right.
Or I think we kind of get, kind of spoiled sometimes by these multi-million-dollar facilities. And then when we actually get our first full-time job, maybe we're an assistant at a really good school, we get our first full-time job and we're stuck with, equipment X, Y, and Z, and we really don't understand what we're working with, right? So I think everybody should have some type of philosophy or some type of experience. I think anybody should be able to take somebody into like a local, rec center and be able to design a high-quality workout. Because if you do that in that type of facility, then you should be able to do it easily in a facility that you actually design and can work in, right? So,
Sure.
And then obviously, we went from Olympic base, and I had some high intensity tangibles in there, and then I moved into more, I don't want to say conjugate, but more, I guess, I will say it, more concurrent, conjugate training aspects without Olympic lifts, more plyometric, more speed aspects, accommodating resistance, and then kind of merge some philosophies together depending on facilities, right? And I think, just how we touched base a little bit, I think some coaches get too pigeonholed that, hey, this is the only way. If we're going to do Olympic lift, then everybody has to Olympic lift. If we're going to do, this method, we're going to do it 100% or not do it all. I think it's improved greatly throughout the years, but I still think some coaches are stuck in those mannerisms, right? So, but yeah, that's what it comes down to. You just have to, and that's something that you have to dictate. Hey, when you give a resume to somebody, and what are you going to voice that's going to set you apart from somebody else, right? Like you could have as much experience as somebody else that maybe you've been at 3 different schools and you've been a director at all 3 different schools, but you've worked with every single sport, rather than, okay, I've just worked with another individual who's been at 3 different schools who just worked with men's basketball. They say on their resume, it says, I just worked with men's basketball at these 3 schools, where on your resume, it says, okay, I worked with men's basketball, but I worked with all these other sports. How is the sport coach deviating that, right? Like, is the school that if someone's been at all SEC and ACC schools, is that different than being at Conference USA and, Sun Belt schools? You know what I'm saying? So it's all differentiation as far as how you depict it on your resume. And really, when you look at it, you can't really look at it as strength coach as more as being better. You got to look at it from what those sports I'm working with. And if I was going to hire this individual for this sport, does his resume or her resume dictate that they're a professional in that area, right? I think as strength coaches, we try to put all this information that we know all this stuff or have all these certifications, and a coach looks at it and they're like, I'm not reading all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's what we have to look at it sometimes is from that view. So, because a lot of strength coaches aren't hiring other strength coaches, the sport coaches are hiring the strength coaches, right? So, even if there is a director for that specific Olympic sport or football, usually the football coaches have a say. So.
Oh yeah, more than just to say, right? Sometimes.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so, at George Walton, obviously, you're in a situation now where it's probably a little more unique, right? And you're like, all right, I'm building something. I'm trying to like piece together something. So if you could kind of like paint like a clear picture for us on like what the hierarchy and sort of like the structure is set up as far as like strength coaches, athletic trainers, sport coaches, where you fall in line with that. Like right now, I know you're a strength coach, and obviously you're kind of running like the department chair of this situation. But like how do you kind of visualize piecing this thing together? Like you're going to be able to have the opportunity to talk about a physical education component, human performance, right? Strength coach, like what does this look like at your situation?
100%. And that's the thing is, it's right now we're very in the beginning stages, right? Like I'm going to say this is a 5-year process. Right now we're ending year 1, moving into year 2. So this is slowly evolving. And hopefully nobody that I, work with even sees this, so they don't know my master plan, right? But it's just a matter of, it's myself and another individual. So we have 2 individuals that actually are in the, department overall. One individual primarily, we pretty much, I would say, are co-directors. Like we work really well together. He just graduated college, just got certified in, certified strength conditioning coach. He'll bring some newer perspectives or his feelings on some things as far as being a former collegiate athlete in nowadays. And then I bring some things as far as, obviously being in the profession for a period of time. And our philosophies pretty much mix very, very well. There's not really, which is really surprising, just because we never really met each other before the first day we actually came on campus, right? So the individual that hired us did a really good job. So this first year, we really pretty much sat down and we're like, hey, like, what is our goal? And our goal was to accommodate as many kids as we possibly can as far as training goes. So our system is a little bit different just because we hired through academia. We're hired through academics. We're not hired through athletics. So we don't have to train anybody before school or after school. We have actual classes throughout the day. Kids sign up as an elective. So our big thing is, okay, we have these kids that have signed up for an elective. We want to see how we can get more kids in, because why couldn't we get more kids into these classes? So, it could have been that there's too many AP classes and maybe some more kids had to take AP classes. So what are some areas that we could open up that we could get some athletes or some students that still wanted to weight train in, so we kind of looked at study halls. If kids had a really good high academic standard and weren't using study halls, we get them in during those times, right? Before school, we try to get kids interested in that. We try to, be at, games and talk to kids and try to publicize it on Instagram and stuff like that. So those are big things. They're trying to get as many individuals involved as possible. We work at a really small high school. Even though we're K through 12 on the total campus, our 9 through 12 is only 280 to 290 kids. So it's very, very small. So some classes we may have 10 kids. Some classes we may have 35. It just depends on the time of the day and when classes are provided. So some sessions we pretty much sat down and said, okay, hey, first off, we want to get as many kids as we can in. Right now, we're right at roughly about 61 or 62% of the total student body trains with us. Okay, so our goal is, okay, we want more, because the more we can shove in the room, the more we overflow the room, then obviously administration will see that this is an important aspect, and we may get a bigger room, right?
Sure.
So we have really good facilities as far as a space goes. We have roughly about 4,000 square foot space. We have 10 half racks. We have some other, some glute hams, some lat pull down, stuff like that. We're very blessed in that manner. So it's made the transition really, really easy as far as training individuals. Our biggest thing is just overcoming, since we are such a small school and coaches have done so much as far as training athletes in the past, it's trying to get over pretty much stigmas of any high school population, right? So, hey, should girls weight train? That's one that we've really had to overcome. Game day training, as far as, hey, are we supposed to lift on game day? I thought game days were just taking it easy. Just stuff like that we've kind of have to manipulate. And then there's obviously things within the school system. If a kid needs to make up tests, or doesn't have a study hall to make up tests, sometimes academia will say, we'll just use the weight training time, right? And then all of a sudden you miss one day, and then pretty soon you miss 2 days, and the kid's grade's affected, and they're like, well, why is it affecting the kid's grade? Well, he's missing weight training, right? So you kind of have to educate these individuals, because before it was just, hey, you just come hit or miss, and that's it, and that doesn't really matter, right? So these are just small things that we're trying to educate ourselves on, right, and try to clean up. So this first year has just been like a really feeling out process. It's like, hey, these are areas that we need to try to fix. This is trying to figure out the student body, like what motivates them, right? Are they highly motivated? Is it something that, do they love to train? Like, just trying to figure out those kind of things. How can we make it more competitive to draw more people in? So it's really been a feeling out time. I've kind of, we worked for an old department chair before, and it was never my intention to get that title or anything like that. But once the title became available, I thought, I conversed with my coworker, and I said, hey, I think to get our message across, I think it's something that it's important that we try to get this, and that way we can not say control, but kind of mold the other individuals within the PE department, right? Because that's where it totally starts. So, we have 2 individuals that work, pretty much K through 5. We have 2 individuals that work, 6th through 8th, and then obviously myself and another individual that work through high school. So now we have 6 individuals pretty much in the PE department. So now we can I can try to educate those individuals and say, hey, what are we doing in the elementary level? Are things competitive? Are we working our basic skills? Are our kids, when they come out of when they get out of, that K through, 5 grades, what are the end goals that we need? What do they need to look like going into sixth grade? What are the things they need to know? You know, is it something that we score things? Do they need to know how to do a push up or a sit up, or, you know, do you bring back the presidential fitness test, like things like those? Like, how do you make kids more competitive too? Or how do you get them more involved in athletics? Because, you know, with our academia schedule, with AP classes and being a college prep, you know, institution, sometimes the best athletes aren't playing sports. Maybe they're concentrating more on their academics, right? Because they're trying to get into college. So how do we make it more involved, you know, as far as those kind of things? So that's the process we're under right now, that it will start beginning, right? Talking to those, you know, PE instructors and being, okay, hey, these are things that, what do you find deemed that are important? What do we need to work on? That by the time they get to sixth grade, they're at that level. And then vice versa, those sixth through eighth grade, right? When they get to ninth grade, where they need to be at, right? And that way, when they get to ninth grade, they can wholeheartedly move right into a system easily without they already know coaching cues, they already knew, you know, basic movement functions, and now we can flow into more specific programming if needed, right? So so that's a big thing right now. Like when we first came in that first year, we got an assessment of the athletes that the individuals we worked with. We just did a modified, like we did an FMS screening, right? So that pretty much put all our individuals in a certain training age. And then from there, we base everything. We have graduation rates or graduation body weight to strength ratios that they can move to different exercises based on their training age to graduate out of. And then, you know, we'll have different things as far as coaching cues. So right now for next year, our you know, academia put in that we need to have like a midterm and a final. So our midterm and final next year is pretty much going to be peer-on-peer critique or peer-on-peer coaching. So they'll have to pick a major exercise, whether it's no Olympic lifts, just because those are obviously a little bit higher skilled, but it might be a deadlift, it might be a squat, a version of a bench press, and they'll have to go through and pretty much teach from the ground up, similar to almost the practical aspect of the CSCCA certification, right? You have to go in and pretty much, you know, teach from the ground up, you know, how to teach that person how to do that lift, use the correct coaching cues, and then from there, that person needs to take, you know, what would be a prescribed workload or set rep range for 4 weeks, coming off of a break or something. You know what I'm saying? So these are things that we're trying to educate these kids on. So when they leave school, right, if they don't play a sport and they're just a general student, they can take care of themselves. They already know how to work out. They know what to look for. They know what to do. They know how to eat correctly. You know, things like that from a fit for life mentality, right? So those are kind of things that we're trying to, almost like a low end intern program, right? We're trying to do that with these kids, so that way they're educated and they understand what's going on from a training perspective. That's a big goal from our end, right?
That's fantastic. That's an incredible, you know, test piece there. I really like that. Yeah.
And it's slowly evolving. And then obviously with technology, I think that's huge too, right? So you know, how can we get academics involved with our STEM program? If we have a science program, exercise science program, analytical from a math program, how can we get these classes involved to use sports science in some type of data tracking, right? They can do that in their labs. They can test some of our students in our classes, and all of a sudden that opens up another thing. Instead of them, you know, it may give them more experience in like a sports science derivative, right? So that way when they go into college, maybe that's an area they want to pursue in, but then they're also using that academia funding to possibly purchase some sports science aspects, whether it's VBT, whether it's working with, you know, Hawkins or you know, another company for force plates, or working with getting Nord boards or some type of science aspects. That's probably, we're looking at for year 3. And then obviously putting some other things into, you know, then after that, possibly working into some type of, you know, sports science or exercise science clubs from that perspective. So that's the game plan. But that takes a lot of backing, right? It takes a lot of human resources. It takes buy-in from the coaches and from administrators. So you really have to, you have to really talk to a lot of people and be, you know, at face value, have really be really authentic to really talk to those individuals. Go, hey, this is my vision. Is this something you're willing to help us with? You know, is it something that you're going to be around here long enough to really help this grow? So that's our, you know, my other individual, you know, it's a 5-year process that we pretty much 5-year plan that we pretty much have put into some type of existence. It's just a matter of getting everybody else on board, right? Because if somebody leaves, if a teacher leaves, and then all of a sudden a new teacher comes in, head of the science department, and all of a sudden now we have to educate them on what we're trying to do, it could be a huge hiccup in the system if they don't want to follow the same direction, right? So, and being a smaller school too, even though we are private, funding for some of that equipment, even some colleges don't have equipment, right? So funding is a huge thing. So is there, special fund that we can get, or are there grants, or is there, special, does a booster want to donate some money? Is it something we can name something after? Like, you really have to get everybody on board from an administrator standpoint too. So
yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, I really like the idea of what you're trying, because while you're talking, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, at some point, like I do generally think, and I could be biased obviously, because like the sample size that I'm basing this off is very small, right? The fitness community, like the people who work in strength and conditioning, personal trainers, strength coaches, whatever the case may be, like I feel like we're moving in a direction where we are creating more interest and more intrigue around training and working out, even if it's just like physical activity, right? Like that is the idea, right? But at the same time, right, you look at just the overall like health and wellness, right, of the large capacity that is the United States of America, rather than you have some other things you have to consider. But like I said, so my sample size is small, right? It's really, you know what I mean? In my mind, I'm like, oh, look at all the people I'm surrounded by that work out and are training. It's like, well, yeah, because they all like that stuff, right? So naturally, if you're interested in something, you're probably going to be more successful in it. But it seems like what you're sort of establishing at a younger age is like, hey, here's a different way to view training and working out. We don't need to view it through the lens of like, hey, you're getting punished if you eat something horribly, you're going to have to go work out, or I need you to work out because you're going to prepare yourself for the horrible eating habits that you're going to have later on in the day or the week, or you're going to go do, or it's like, hey, you have to do this because you have to prepare for your sport. Like I was talking to a bunch of former D1 athletes that I used to work with the other day, and I was like, how much did you guys actually like being Division I athletes? And they're like, well, think about it like this, and these are more so like my words than theirs, but they're like, well, I'm told how I have to train, when I can train, how I need to approach that training, right? When I can show up at the building, when I can eat, what I can eat, all of these things, right? And they're like, at the crux of it, like, yeah, like, of course, like there's the obvious things, like you're getting financial aid for school, a lot of them are getting free schooling, right? Like all these things, like it's great. It's all good stuff. But I think like really sort of like reshaping the way they view working out, training, the idea of physical fitness, physical activity, creating a positive light, and just sort of like creating a framework around it that's like, hey, this is the same kind of, it should just be like part of your day. Like you're going to challenge your body physically in some way, shape or form, mentally in some way, shape or form. Right. And here's some ways that we can go about doing it responsibly. Here are some, what I also think it provides some context. I think the biggest mistake that a lot of the world of fitness makes is they make it seem like in order to achieve said goals, you need to do so much in order to get there. Right. And it's just like, okay, well, if I'm someone who's starting off and I have no idea, I'm like, well, that's pretty overwhelming. That doesn't really see, you know what I mean? Where the reality is like, if you're active for like a half an hour, I mean, especially kids like your age, it's like, let's be honest, like you can do body weight squats for like 30 minutes. And it's like the squat's going to go up. You know what I mean? It's just, so I think that's really cool, but I also think it's really cool. I love that idea of the test. It's like, hey, here's a part, like, because now you're creating an importance around the actual class itself, right? There's no more like people like, hey, we're going to skip stuff, you missed study hall, you need to do study, like, okay, you're going to skip your training today or whatever, do this. It's like, no, here is a class that you need to pass. Here's a different way to view physical education. It's not just get active. It's like, here's how we view these things. You know what I mean? So, we're at about, I think like 50 minutes now. So if you want to kind of take the rest of the way and just, you can kind of give your thoughts on any closing remarks or whatever on this, because it's been incredible insight. And I think this is an awesome way to continue to try to create different pieces of education, different ways of viewing training and physical activity. But it seems like you're really able to do that. And I wish you guys the best of luck. But yeah, if you want to kind of like, give us your closing remarks on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's highly important. I mean, that's something I've always envisioned and try to work with collegiate athletes too. I think sometimes collegiate athletes are pulled in a lot of different directions as far as that process. And you kind of have a lot of different individuals working depending on that collegiate institution, right? Like you have your sports medicine, you have your sports psychology, you have your sports performance, you have academia. They're all working for you. Where in high school situation, depending where you're at, it's similar. But at the end of the day, our big thing is not all those kids are going to go work and are going to be Division I athletes, right? Some of them have no interest. Like we get kids that are, athletes and kids that are non-athletes, right? So our big thing is, okay, how can we make a overall perspective? Okay, we're improving performance, or wellness for all those individuals. But then at the end of the day, when they're out of our hands, right, what are they taking home with us? And I think that's the biggest thing, most memorable thing as far as, being a coach to somebody is at the end of the day, when you're not around them, what kind of impact do they really make, right? What would you really make an impact on them, So I think that's huge. And that's something that, those tangibles are important as far as, eating, sleeping, doing things from a wellness perspective, a mind, body, and soul perspective, right? Mental health, I think, has come up. But if we can provide those things, that way when kids get into stressful situations and they don't have family members around, they know how to release some energy and live a more of a healthy lifestyle instead of turning to food, drugs, alcohol, things from those things. As far as we've all done it ourselves, right? But it's just a matter of perspective. Know that there is an alternative, especially from a mental health perspective. So I think that's one reason we chose that. But we want to make a difference as far as our profession too. That's why those classes, like those finals or midterms, like we want to put the kids in our shoes and go, hey, this is a little bit more difficult than what they're just not coaches that come in, just make up stuff. Like this is stuff that actually is transitional that they can actually use. And then all of a sudden we get credibility as coaches instead of just being the weight room guy or the guy that lifts weights. Right. So I think that helps standardize a profession and then hopefully moves the profession forward so that we do, become a little bit more important in society. And maybe get a little bit better wage. And who knows, these individuals that we're educating now could be future employers down the road, right? So I think that's where we need to make the mark and really that'll set our profession a little bit more forward, I guess. So
yeah, no, that's awesome, John. We appreciate it, man. This is an awesome podcast. Yeah, no, this is good stuff. I'm excited now. I want to see, obviously, we'll check in and we'll keep in touch. But I mean, 2-3 year, 5-year plan. I want to see this stuff come to fruition, and I'll be rooting for you for sure. But yeah, no, thanks for hopping on, man. I appreciate you doing this, and not just on short notice, just in general. This is good conversation. This is good education. Good way to kind of like reset, rebalance, sort of zoom out a little bit and get a little better perspective on like what it is that we're doing here, why we're doing it, and the value that we can actually provide. I think there's a lot of times we get really fixated on like, okay, here's the value that I can provide in terms of what I'm doing right in front of me. And of course that's good, but I think understanding, different ways to kind of provide context for younger coaches who are kind of caught in the jungle right now of like collegiate sports, whatever it is. So yeah, man, we appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on.
No, for sure. And like you said, I mean, X's and O's. I mean, I think the younger coaches are more stuck on X's and O's, like right now for their programming, like, oh, this is my philosophy. Whereas you get older, it's like, okay, how is this going to make an impact, right? Like, how can I lead the profession better than I found it? And hopefully, when I'm done with my career, hopefully, I've done some things here and there that help the profession out. So, but no, I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, it's been enjoyable. It's awesome talking to you and finally getting on here and voicing some concerns and a little bit of knowledge. So it's fantastic.
Absolutely. A lot of knowledge. That was good stuff. Thank you so much, John.
No
Appreciate
problem.
it. Do you have, I don't know, are you on social media? You have anything that you want to plug? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I do have, I think everybody has social media anymore, right? So the young and the old. So yeah, I have social media, Instagram, Twitter. I think my name is Coach JG Patrick, I believe.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn too. I mean, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of if you need to. I usually respond fairly quickly, but yeah, I mean, anybody more welcome to talk shop. I've traveled, but that's what I've done this summer, is traveled some places and seen some people locally. That's what I like to do. So just definitely get a different perspective of things and go from there. So anybody wants to talk shop or share information, always open to it, and we'll just leave that open from there. So it's fantastic.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome. Well, John, we thank you, and want to thank the listeners, obviously, as always, for listening. Without you guys, this is impossible. So yeah, that'll wrap this up. But John, we'll talk soon. And for the listeners, till next time.
Have a good one.